Hello there, guys. My name is Dave Coker. Today we're going to talk about ChatGPT and what many of us are calling the AI generation. So the goals of what we're going to do today, I'm going to introduce myself briefly. We'll talk about ChatGPT sufficient that you'll have an understanding of how the model works. And then we'll look at the world through the eyes of what many of us are calling the AI generation. So in terms of myself, I'm Dave Coker. I'm a lecturer in finance. I'm program manager at a university for their MSc in FinTech. I describe myself as a veteran of global Wall Street. Started working on Wall Street back in the late 80s. And at that time, the culture of Wall Street was unique. And then over the years, it's been exported into the city of London, into Frankfurt, Paris, Amsterdam, all cities that I've worked in. And it's interesting to talk about that. I'm published in Wiley's The AI book, and I'm a contributor to another book called AI Applications, which is coming out Q4 of 2023. In terms of my background, I describe myself as a fintech pioneer. I've been programming professionally in financial services since the late 1980s. You can verify it. Just go to my LinkedIn profile, take a look. Moved to Deutsche Bank in 92, took on the job of VP of Global Risk Management there. Moved to ABN AMRO after I moved to Europe in 1997, and I took on the role as program manager for global risk management at that institution. And then I worked at Moody's for a few years, headed up global projects, and I was director of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa consulting operation. Now, all these positions were hands-on. I wasn't the kind of senior manager who just dictated. If the team fell behind, I went out and started coding to help them out as well. I sell market research presently to several investment banks, mostly in the city of London. I do have one on Wall Street. And this gives me special insight and connections to financial services in a very, very major way. In terms of education, there we go, all the good stuff you'd expect. I've got very strong finance and very strong technology background. Lots of time, lots of coding, lots of experience coding artificial intelligence and machine learning applications. And this goes back to even before I joined Wall Street when I was at Bell Labs. I was doing expert systems, form of artificial intelligence. Oh, back in 85, I think that was. That was quite a while ago. Got a strong teaching background. I do enjoy helping students succeed and helping them achieve their goals. Been doing it part-time since 2003. And I'm heavily plugged into the City of London and Wall Street culture. And I have been asked to comment many times on LinkedIn profiles. Banks just won't approach somebody. They'll try to find out before they approach somebody if they'd fit in properly. So I've commented on many profiles, including some people from academia that I've worked with who now are presenting themselves as financial services or machine learning people. And the question from my clients has been, would this guy fit in? What do you know about this guy? And I comment on CVs. There's a huge hiring binge right now in the City of London for AI people. Really interesting that we're seeing all this activity take place. So I'm commenting and doing lots of interviewing for my my City of London financial services clients. And it's been really, really amazing over the past month, the number of AI consultants that have been hired in the City of London. It's absolutely incredible. I do create a lot of content. I've got a blog I've been running for about 15 years called FinTech Flash News. I sold it actually at the end of last year. I'm still doing most of the work myself. It hasn't worked out the way I thought it would, but it's okay. I've got the money at least, right? So I'm still doing that blog, and I enjoy that very much. I've been doing that for quite a while. And then about 2 years ago, I started up a blog that I never really told people about that I was running called AInews.education. And I only did it because I was curious about the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning to education. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, I've recently been approached twice now about selling this blog. Who knows? Maybe I will. I'm not so sure about that. So now we know there's a lot of media headlines, guys, about AI and ChatGPT and things like that. And some of them are very factual. Other ones are really over the top. And here's one: how it can crush customer service. Really what they're talking about there is it can add significantly or improve markedly customer service. We know that if you're a prompt engineer, as we're describing it, you can get a job easily with a six-figure salary. There's no shortage of jobs right now. It's really amazing. Some countries moving the opposite way, banned in Italy over privacy concerns. I think there were GDPR violations that they were concerned about. And here's another one that's sort of over the top, right? AI is better than our staff, say over 50% of business leaders. So what about jobs? Well, it won't be too bad a change in jobs in spite of what the media says. This one was funny, and we've seen this a great deal, that a lot of times the AIs mess up and they don't know propriety. They don't know political correctness. And yeah, they do sort of say things that are inappropriate. Some people are trying to save jobs, protect them from the ChatGPT revolution. Yeah, I'm just glad these people weren't around when the word processor became common. A whole bunch of stenography jobs were lost then. And ChatGPT, and here's one of the ridiculous ones, ChatGPT is going to change housework. I don't know about that. I've done my share of scrubbing the kitchen floor. I'm not sure how ChatGPT can help me with that, except maybe I can give my wife a perfect way to nag me to scrub the floor. But when we talk about all this stuff, when we talk about artificial intelligence, one thing you have to realize is that this is just an illusion. The machine isn't smart. The program's not self-aware. The program executes tens, perhaps hundreds of millions, even potentially billions of operations. It rationalizes the results, and because of that, it appears intelligent. This aligns nicely with a classic theory of intelligence that tells us about simple actions combining to form more complex actions. Here's the neurons in our brain, and they're either on or off. That's the only state a neuron can be. It can either fire or not fire. It can choose to propagate a signal or not propagate a signal. Very, very simple actions. That's all they can do. But if we combine billions of neurons in the human brain in as many as 6 different layers, a very complex structure all across the brain, all these neurons are still doing very simple things, but the result is intelligence. And it's really interesting thinking about this and how it aligns with ChatGPT. But let's step back a minute. ChatGPT is nothing more than what we call a large language model. They're called LLMs for a reason. These models are trained on language. Training means they're shown a very, very large number of documents. We'll get to the details a little bit later. After a sufficient number, they can understand written languages very well. They parse the language, I should say, using a technology called NLP, Natural Language Processing. I've written a lot of programs in that. In fact, at my prior university I had, back in 2018, I had an online bot up and running and ready to go. It was a little bit too advanced for that university, which is still lagging, but it's okay. I had that working, and now, of course, you can do it through ChatGPT. You don't have to program this stuff yourself. So it's reasonable to try to understand, when we talk about this, how it all works. Well, an LLM does nothing more than, given some text, it tries to continue, it tries to continue the text that it was presented with. It uses the data set it was trained on, and the LLM will make guesses, educated guesses, about what words should follow. And it gives us continuity. When we enter some text, it completes it for us. And that's actually pretty interesting when you start to think about how it strings together the text over time to form a relatively large response to our query, or what is called in ChatGPT, OpenAI circles, a prompt. Let's stop and take a little bit about the history, or talk a little bit about the history. So in 2018, GPT-1 came out. 117 million parameters, and a parameter is nothing more than something that can be changed about the model. Unknown size of the data set, and language was not too good. GPT-2 came out in 2020. Look at the increase in the number of parameters, up to 1.5 billion parameters, a 40 gigabyte training data set. I've got it running here on one of my Macs at home. The language is limited, but it's okay, but it's nothing that would really impress you too much. GPT-3 came out in 2020, and this is when I really started to notice what was going on in the field. Of course, had installed GPT-2 and said, yawn. It was interesting, but not that interesting. Of course, with GPT-3, things got to be very, very interesting. And again, look at the increase in the number of parameters. We're up to 175 billion. The training data set soared, 570 gigabytes. The language started to be very, very good. It actually was pretty impressive. And GPT-4 came out in March of 2023. 170 trillion parameters, unknown size of the data set, we're not totally sure. And the language is exceedingly good at this point. It's actually pretty wild. So we were talking about ChatGPT, so it's reasonable to ask what the connection is between GPT 1, 2, 3, and 4 and ChatGPT. Well, ChatGPT uses a model called GPT 3.5. And if you refer to the prior slide, we never talked about GPT 3.5 for a simple reason. The engineers at OpenAI took GPT-3 and they ran it through a process, they engaged a process called supervised learning. And essentially what we're doing with supervised learning is we're asking the model a question, and if it gets the right response, we reward it. We strengthen the neural net. If it gets the wrong response, we don't strengthen the neural net. We weaken the neural net such that over time it learns. And this resulted in a model, a database that is called GPT 3.5. And GPT 3.5 is the basis, the foundation for ChatGPT. It's the model that's used in ChatGPT. So there are 4 things that we have to be aware of that they did, 4 key innovations in GPT 3.5. First of all, the model's helpful. You ask it questions and it tries to give you, it follows your explicit instructions and gives you a useful answer. Now compare this to models from, say, Microsoft or Google. Not quite so good, as we know. Factual? Oh yeah, definitely factual, guys. If you think about this, it allows us to get useful responses. And in AI, there's something called hallucinations. Via something called the Truthful QA dataset, the engineers at OpenAI could ensure that the number of hallucinations, the number of totally bizarre answers that ChatGPT might come up with, are minimized. And this is an important concept. We'll come back to that a little bit later. It's easy for us to understand the results of this model. And finally, toxic content is banned. And there's a data set called real toxicity that makes sure that this AI, that OpenAI's model, doesn't produce content or responses that are appalling, that we would never say as people in polite society. But we shouldn't really just focus on ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is just one LLM of a large number of large language models. Microsoft has their own model, Bing. Google has Bard. Apple has Siri. And as someone who's been using Macs since the 80s, I've got a real problem with Apple because they came out with Siri first, and long before these other LLMs, they didn't do anything with it. It's like the most amazing thing. You've got it on your iPhone, although to be totally honest with you, I've replaced Siri on my iPhone with ChatGPT. And Stanford University recently came out with a model called Alpaca. So there's a large number of these models. There's a lot of innovation in this space right now. And more importantly, we're going to look at this a little bit later. There's a very large number of specialized tools that run on top of these LLMs. Now, start to think about this critically. If we go back and think about the mobile phone, once upon a time, it was just a phone. And when I was at Deutsche, I had one of these. These are one of the original mobile phones. It's a brick phone. I don't think you've seen pictures of these, and you can actually buy replicas online these days that do pretty much everything that the current phones do, except for all the applications. Now, these phones were really innovative, because when I got mine in 95, I think it was amazing because you could make and receive calls. Of course, that's all you could do with it. No SMS. Texts came much later, a couple of years later, I seem to recall. So with the initial phone, all you could really do was call somebody, but it was breathtaking. It was absolutely amazing. And this phone sort of wormed its way in to our lives to the point where now, when the iPhone came out, we started to see phones transition. we started to see phones becoming absolutely essential. And this is what the CEO of NVIDIA calls the iPhone moment, when the phone changed from being something that was nice to have or just a phone to an essential tool. We're coming up to that point with AI. And clearly, if you think about it, with a phone these days, you need them for absolutely everything. Communication, shopping. Some people, it's well documented, some people fall asleep with their phones, as unhealthy as that practice is. I tend to turn my phone off when I go to bed. I don't know about you, but yeah, I don't keep it on. So when you think further about the phone, think about this. What happens if you lose your phone? Well, lots of people panic. Why? It's difficult to do things without your phone. There's a very wide variety of services you can't access at all. Think about banking or even two-factor authentication. The university I work for uses 2FA. You lose your phone, you can't log into a university system. It's that simple. Same thing with banking. I tend to buy Bitcoin every Friday. And when I send the money over from my bank to the exchange where I buy Bitcoin, I have to use 2FA to authorize the transaction. So yeah, many people do panic when they lose their phone, when it's lost or damaged. So what do you do when you lose your phone? You replace it really quickly. And that's what I did when I when I damaged my iPhone. The wife and I were going to the pub, I should say, on a Saturday night. And it's important you understand I was going to the pub, not coming back from the pub. And I dropped it and the phone was unusable. Now, I didn't panic because I've got liquidity, but I went to the Apple store the next day and bought a new phone. Why did I do that? Well, they were quoting a 10 to 15 day working day repair time, and you can't do a darn thing without it. And also the phone was very old. It was a 6. So I bought myself a brand new 13. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to do things because the phone had become an essential tool in my life. So we see that the phone is essential, and we're actually in the the AI's iPhone moment. And this moment is when AI is transitioning from something that's interesting or nice to have to something that's essential. The field is moving very quickly. And I always tell people, fintech is a field where we see changes, big changes by quarter. But AI is a field where we're seeing large changes on a weekly basis. We're starting to see tools emerge that will help us create useful applications. In fact, there's been a huge explosion of applications literally over the last month. So it's very easy to see that in the near future, AI is going to be just as indispensable as the iPhone is, or the phone-ish, I should say, is now for us. Let's look at a couple of examples. First of all, this only came out in the beginning of April. These are what are called integrations. Some people call them plugins. It doesn't matter. The API's been around, but we weren't really aware of this until OpenAI released the first 12 integrations that they did with partners, that they did with people that they had chosen to work with it. Now, all you need is an API key to access OpenAI's API, and you can address a limitation of ChatGPT. Because ChatGPT, if you want to think about it this way, is literally just a brain in the box. But through an integration, through a plugin, your model, your LLM, can now interact with the broader world, right? So now what ChatGPT is, it can access remote databases. It can pull the data out of a remote database. It can access relevant and time and changing information in a timely manner. Remember, ChatGPT was trained as of 2021. It doesn't know anything about the world after 2021. But through an integration, we can actually lock it into, or allow it to access, I should say, up-to-date databases. It's absolutely incredible what you can do with this model. It's really wild. So the usefulness of this LLM, of OpenAI's ChatGPT, has literally exploded over the last month. As useful as it was when it first came out, back in November, I remember playing around with it. I was pretty amazed. It's actually incredible what you can do with it now. Another one, and this one just came out literally the second week of April, called AutoGPT. Now, if you've used ChatGPT, you ask it a question and it gives you some information. You refine your prompt. It goes off. It gives you more information. You refine your prompt again. It could be very time consuming. It certainly could be labor intensive to get the answer that you want. Now, this is really interesting what happens here. With AutoGPT, you give it a goal. You tell it the goal, and you also mention about limitations and resources you have and limitations you're faced with. And then AutoGPT will execute by itself and deliver. Now, some demonstrations I've seen are really amazing. I am still plugged into the venture capital community. I've done 2 deals over the past decade, and there's an explosion of money and opportunity now. So I've been sitting in on a lot of pitches as an angel investor. And I saw one, I'm not going to tell you the exact application, but basically what they did when they were demonstrating AutoGPT was they asked it for a business plan. And they gave it the resources, the limitations. It went off and refined a business plan all by itself. You didn't have to do anything else. It got a very useful business plan. It's absolutely incredible. Now, that was relatively quick, but other applications have taken AutoGPT days to resolve. And a final thing that's interesting is that with AutoGPT, it now has a memory. If you use ChatGPT, you'll know another limitation of it is every conversation is unique. It's isolated. ChatGPT can't refer to other conversations you had with it. But with AutoGPT, it has a long-term memory. So it remembers from time to time. So what we're going to see over the next 5 years is that AI is going to become increasingly pervasive. I sat in on a product pitch. This young lady's trying to come up with, or trying to get funds, I should say, for a baby monitor that's using an LLM. Now think about this. It's not the kind of passive baby monitor where you go sit and Netflix and chill in the living room and the baby monitor tells you you can hear noises in the baby's room about what's going on. It's a baby monitor that listens to the baby, it responds to the baby, and she claimed that the baby monitor can actually start to teach the baby numbers and letters. It's wild stuff. We're going to see it percolate into preschool, into kindergarten. They're going to grow up with AI. It's going to be used in high schools, colleges, universities at all levels. This generation is going to be exposed to AI almost from birth. And it's not only going to be online, guys. This is something that's really important because right now we're tied to a keyboard or we're tied to our phone to use an LLM like OpenAI's ChatGPT. But OpenAI has developed a chip, an LLM chip. Microsoft's already announced their Athena chip. It's an LLM chip. There are many others that are also developing LLMs. And what this means is you'll no longer need a large server farm costing hundreds of millions of dollars to run an LLM. It'll be able to run natively on phones or other devices, perhaps specialized devices. And this is exactly what happened with computer graphics. If you look at what we had in the 1990s, the early 1990s, the graphics were very, very crude. But once NVIDIA released the first graphics processor in 1999, computer graphics became increasingly realistic and pervasive. So we're going to see LLMs integrated with all sorts of devices, and they're going to be able to work offline. You're no longer going to need a persistent connection to the internet. You can build a device, you can put all the information the device needs in that device, and the device can use an LLM on a chip to ask questions. Think about GPS navigation and all the problems that result. It'll be much, much better. And there's other applications that we can do. The key takeaway is that LLM will always be with you. And the AI generation is going to be working in a world where AI skills will be as essential as office skills are now. And what this means is that presently in the office skills, MS Office, Excel, Word, sometimes PowerPoint, they're baseline skills. If you don't have those skills, you ain't getting the interview. In less than 5 years, it's going to be the same thing for AI. You're going to have a minimal level of digital literacy, which will include AI skills. The ability to work with artificial intelligence, with LLMs. And this is going to lead us. The AI generation is going to be in this world where AI is going to become a companion for life. And this is actually pretty interesting when you think about this, guys, right? It's easy to see that once we get used to AI, we're going to want the AI to know us, to remember us, to build and expand upon previous interactions. It's easy to see that AI eventually will become a companion for life. You'll get an AI companion when you're young, and it will follow you throughout your life. Think about this. All the conversations you have, all the data you look up will always be with you. Now, this isn't going to happen until we start to see the emergence of standards. So once OpenAI's products can talk and share data with Google or Microsoft or anybody else's, Apple's, for instance, AI products, much like documents now can be shared between Microsoft Office or Google's Workspace or even Apple's Pages. Once we reach that point, then we'll see AIs as companions for life. And this will be wonderful. This will be really, really wild, because when you have conversations, when you learn things, you'll be able to refer back to it. The AI will have perfect memory. So the AI generation, guys, just like the iPhone is totally essential now, the AI generation is not going to know a life without AI. Now, some people are already claiming huge productivity increases by using AI. I've seen figures out there 7 to 10 times. I don't totally believe it yet. But we do know that there will be a productivity boost by using AI. It doesn't matter if productivity will go up 100% or 1,000% or even higher. It doesn't really matter. We just know that the AI generation is going to experience a huge increase in productivity. They'll be able to acquire new skills very, very rapidly. And this is something you can already do with OpenAI's ChatGPT. You can ask it to come up with a lesson plan, to learn a foreign language, maybe to learn coding. It goes off and does that for you. And it will, as I've mentioned before, it'll help us have a perfect memory. So when we have conversations with our AI companion last week, last month, last quarter, last year, last decade, the AI will remember. From the time we're babies all the way up to our twilight years, it will remember conversations, and this will help us improve our performance. And it's pretty easy to see that this is not hyperbole, guys. Already, the phone improves productivity. Already, the phone helps us acquire new skills. I've got data camp on my phone. I practice programming on the tube very often, right? The phone already can help us have a perfect memory within constraints of the phone. The difference is going to be the AI will be with us persistently. And the phone certainly helps us perform. Thank you very much for your time, guys. I hope you found that interesting. This is ChatGPT and the AI generation. Once again, my name is Dave Coker. Thank you.